and Business Development Committee, District 7 Councilmember Richard Alarcon. Mr. Alarcon, welcome back to Council Week in Review.
It's a pleasure to be here.
For more than a century now, it seems that Los Angeles has been the undisputed entertainment capital of the world, but so many productions are leaving. Why are they leaving, and why is it so important?
Well, they're leaving because, as I've described it, it's more of a death of a thousand cuts than one singular reason. It's not necessarily just high business taxes. It's not just location issues. It's a compilation of a lot of things that frankly have made filming in Los Angeles unfriendly. And so we are fighting to keep the business in Los Angeles, and the recommendations that we made this week, I think, will send a very powerful message to the industry that we care about them, we love them, we want them to stay, we want their filming in Los Angeles, but frankly, we have a lot more work to do.
And of course, your Jobs and Business Development Committee came up with 18 recommendations just in committee to reduce what's called runaway production, and I would imagine that tax credits would be playing a major role in that.
Tax credits are a primary issue, there's no question about it. To the extent that we can extend tax credits to the filming industry, we might be able to save many shoots in Los Angeles. But it's not just about the film industry per se. There are businesses that are essentially putting their own taxes on companies that are filming in their neighborhoods just because they have a building in the background. And sometimes that is enough to create a bad sense from the film company, and maybe the next time they won't shoot in Los Angeles. So we're looking at business tax reductions for not just the film industry per se, but also those ancillary organizations that are imposing charges on companies that are filming with their businesses in the background, and also in the interiors. To the extent that we can reduce these charges, if you will, or if we can give tax breaks to those companies, again, we might be able to enhance the filming opportunities in Los Angeles.
Beyond the tax incentives, what are some of the other broad stroke recommendations that you're making?
Well, as I said, filming in Los Angeles has become a problem because there are so many different ways that they are approached to face challenges in the community, in the governmental process, with other businesses. So many of the recommendations are very specific. One of the large issues is parking. Where can they find parking when they're doing their shoots without disrupting the community? And so we're looking at city facilities, we're looking at private parking organizations, and the recommendations will ask for a report on how we can improve the parking conditions. Another one, for example, is the Department of Water and Power electronic lines where they have just dirt. We've asked the Department of Water and Power to allow film companies to have parking under their guide wires for 7 days, up to 7 days, free of charge, to encourage not just filming in Los Angeles, but also broadening the areas where they might be filming, because those guide wires transect all of Los Angeles. There are also issues of relief relative to specific locations. The Griffith Park Observatory has been mentioned, the Hollywood sign. Ironically, the Hollywood sign is controlled by the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, and yet they charge $10,000 per shoot to film the Hollywood sign in a movie, and that, we think, is a very negative message, notwithstanding the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce demands on city government to improve filming in Los Angeles. That sends a very contradictory message. So it runs across the spectrum of reducing business taxes, improving the culture of Los Angeles to appreciate the film industry, and also improving the processes for filming to make it more film friendly, and look at the specific recommendations relative to what the city can do.
You talked about parking, which of course is key in all walks of life here in Los Angeles, and I think Mr. Parks was talking about a neighborhood that just is constantly bombarded because it looks like anywhere USA. It sounds to me as if you have a community outreach and education effort here as well.
Absolutely. The Film LA organization, which is the organization that is responsible for improving the opportunities for filming in Los Angeles, I believe has been undercut in terms of their level of service provision by funding constraints. We have to review that to see whether we need to empower them to do much more in the way of community relations, to bridge the gap between specific film shoots and those specific communities that are affected by those shoots. Sometimes it might be an independent studio that doesn't necessarily know how a community might react to a particular kind of shoot in a local community, and we need that bridge, and Film LA, I believe, is the entity to do it. We used to do it under the Entertainment Industry Development Council, and when that changed to become Film LA, that opportunity was reduced in terms of their funding and their ability to outreach to the community. So I think that's a critical element of the improvements that we will make.
On the subject of neighborhoods again, when you've got neighborhoods that think that they've just been hammered by so many productions in their area, and they say, you know, we're not really seeing the benefit from this, we're not seeing the jobs, for example, come back into our neighborhoods, what do you tell them? What's the answer to that?
The answer is, if they feel bad about it, they're probably right. There probably is something that could be improved. And one of the things that we would look at is marketing other parts of Los Angeles where they're more film friendly. This is a very diverse city, and yet we seem to concentrate our film shoots in particular areas. In fact, in testimony before my committee, the vice president of Fox TV Productions said that they're filming in my district right now, and they find it very friendly, but when they film downtown and in West LA, it's much more difficult. That's not to say that the people are any different. It's just to say that the conditions, the community may be different to the extent that they appreciate filming in different ways. And again, it may be maybe there's just too much of a saturation in particular communities that can be frankly unfriendly toward the community. And so we can improve upon those things with I think effective community relations, but also developing a marketing strategy to educate all the people of Los Angeles as to how important the film industry is to us. 142,500 jobs in this industry. Those are friends, family, and neighbors, and they get good wages and they provide good economics for our community. And so we want to develop a marketing scheme to upgrade the knowledge and therefore make communities more receptive to filming in their locations.
A few moments ago, you mentioned the Film LA organization. Do we know yet whether or not they can be effective in trying to achieve this effect of spreading productions more around the whole community instead of just certain small areas?
I believe that they can be more effective, but it may take additional resources, and we've called for a report on just that. When EIDC experienced its problems, the Entertainment Industry Development Council experienced some very real problems. The city reacted by reducing the scope of that organization and calling it Film LA. I believe some of the reductions might have been premature and might have been sort of like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So I think we need to re-engage the community in a discussion about whether to give Film LA a little more reach, a little more resources, so that they could do a more effective job of marketing filming in Los Angeles and developing better relations with the communities that might have problems with film shoots in their communities.
Well, and obviously the state of California and the county of Los Angeles play an important part in all this. How are we working with them, and what can they do to help keep California the key player here in the entertainment industry?
That's a very important question, and it was addressed by Mr. Reyes in City Council when he added a 19th recommendation, and that was to essentially build strategic alliances with our partners. And so the fourth leg on the stool of our strategic plan is to build more effective alliances with interested parties. In this case, it would be the California legislature, where we might be able to create incentives for good behavior and filming in Los Angeles, and disincentives for bad behavior. And so we are absolutely going to reach out to the legislature in Los Angeles, the delegation from Los Angeles, to see if we can more strategically organize, plan, and develop legislation that positively impacts the film industry.
You mentioned a major industry executive testifying before your committee, and I'm sure you had a lot of questions for him. What has been the general reaction from the film, television, and commercial industries to your proposal so far?
Well, I think first of all, they're just pleased that we're doing a lot of talk about it. There's a certain level of skepticism because it's not the first time we've talked about it, and so I would say that we want to demonstrate with real actions that we're very serious about this. That we need the film industry, and not just as a revenue stream for the city of Los Angeles, but for our economy is dependent on this industry in so many ways. And so these 19 actions films were really primarily intended to send a positive message to the industry. They've received that message well. There's still a level of skepticism. I would encourage them to be skeptics, because that skepticism will drive our officials to make the right decisions to help them. But my goal is, at the end of 1 year, I hope the industry will say, you know what, Los Angeles is a better place to film.
One of the other things that caught my attention in looking over the proposals you've made is having a dedicated staff person in every council office to deal with this issue in individual district neighborhoods. That seems like a fairly large investment of city resources at a time when we're really strapped.
Oh, it's not really, because we have deputies that are generally community relations experts anyway. That's what they do. This is one of the industries that we want to focus on, and to suggest we're not adding any new positions. We're merely saying somebody in our offices, and most of us have 15 to 20 staff people, and we just want to designate one of those people to be the film sort of expert that would respond to the complaints, participate in the discussions about strategic planning, about programmatic changes, and would be the general contact on the issue of film. So it's very similar to my contact on public works or my contact on the police department. They would simply have a staff person that everybody who has a question related to filming in their community can go directly to their council office and know who that person is. And I think it'll upgrade the information flow from the community, and also, frankly, it'll help the council members get better information on a consistent basis.
So not a dedicated staff person, but a good point of contact. Thanks for clearing that up. Finally, you've got a lot of nuts and bolts things also that you need to deal with. For example, most production shoots require extra electricity, a lot of power. How do you deal with things like that?
Well, one of the recommendations is looking at where there are a high number of shoots, particularly in government buildings. City Hall is one of the most used locations for filming. Of course, they can use it for free. But one of the things that would be most helpful is to allow them to have a utility node that they could just plug into, so they don't have to bring massive trucks in with large generators, sometimes blocking traffic, and in any case, very costly. They could just plug in, pay for the use of the power, and it would make it very simple. Now, I don't know how many of these we can build, but we're asking for 3 from the Department of Water and Power, and doing that, we think, will greatly assist in those particular locations by reducing the complications about filming in those particular locations.
Sounds like a simple idea that would probably work. Sounds good. District 7 Councilmember Richard Ollicon, thanks for joining us on Council Week in Review.
Always a pleasure.
Film LA is a nonprofit public benefit corporation that provides a one-stop resource for location production permits and acts as a crucial link between production companies and the communities in which they film. And you can reach Film LA at 213-977-8600 or on the web at filmla.com. You can listen to City Council meetings as well as committee and commission meetings on the telephone by using the city's council phone system. In the downtown area, dial 213-621-CITY. In West LA, dial 310-471-CITY. For the San Pedro area, dial 310-547-CITY. And in the San Fernando Valley, dial 818-904-9450. Just follow the recorded instructions for the meetings you want to hear. And we invite you to address the Los Angeles City Council on any item on the council agenda, as well as during public comment. You may come downtown to City Hall or go to the Van Nuys City Hall and participate via video teleconferencing. And now, those of you living in the Harbor area can go to the San Pedro City Hall, located at 638 South Beacon Street, room 700 in San Pedro, and also participate in council meetings via video teleconferencing. Well, that concludes our program for the week ending October 9th, 2009. On behalf of Ephraim Monabat and everyone here at Channel 35, I'm Jack Popejoy. Thank you for watching, and please join us for the next Council Week in Review.
Moving is so much of who we are. It's easy to take it for granted. Multiple sclerosis stops people from moving. We exist to make sure it doesn't. The National Multiple Sclerosis Society is a collective of passionate individuals united by a common goal to address the challenges of each person whose life is affected by MS. We believe that moving is not just something you can or can't do, but rather is who you are. That if you are alive, you move, along with, because of, and in spite of the great big turning world. Join the movement, the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, at nationalmssociety.org.
In the aftermath of a disaster, you may not be able to rely on your knowledge of your home. You might also not be able to rely on your guide dog. The dog may be injured, frightened, confused, panicky, and/or disoriented. Be prepared to calm your dog and to keep it confined and securely leashed and/or harnessed. If you use a cane, remember to keep it readily available to assist you around hazards and obstacles. Keep a spare by your bed and at all exit doors, as well as a spare leash for the dog. Ensure that your guide dog is microchipped and that their license and identification tag have current contact information. Guide dogs can accompany you to an emergency shelter. Just as you need to prepare an emergency kit for yourself, you need to have one for your dog. Ensure you have enough water, food, any medications they may require, and a first aid kit. A blanket, a rug, and favorite toy may help calm them as well. Keep your veterinarian's name and number in the kit. Vaccination records may be required at the shelter. Only you know what can prepare and assist you and your family during a disaster. Are you prepared? For additional information, please contact the Department on Disability or the Emergency Management Department by calling the numbers on the screen or by dialing 311.
LA City View Channel 35. Your city, your channel.
gentlemen, and welcome to the Los Angeles City Council. Today is the 14th of October, Wednesday, and we are here in the John Farrow Council Chambers. We meet here every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. We also meet in Van Nuys City Hall for the first Friday of the month in our efforts to bring City Council closer to all Angelinos. We welcome our viewers on Channel 35 and those of you who are here in Council Chambers or in our Council Chamber locations in San Pedro and Van Nuys, where we broadcast these meetings live as well. Our agendas are available in the back of the room. They're also available online or at our City Clerk's office. Those are made available to the public 72 hours in advance or 24 hours in advance for our special items, our special agenda items. Also attached to those agendas are all the supporting material for all the City Council items. So what we get to read, you get to read. Our department reports and our analysts' reports are all attached there for your convenience. And there are 3 ways that you can follow the City Council meetings live or recorded. One is through your television on Channel 35, which broadcasts these meetings live throughout the city's cable system. 2 is through your computer on the internet. And if you navigate to this URL, lacity.org, on the left hand of the page, you'll see live streaming, links to live streaming webcasts of our council meetings and archive footage of all of our past council meetings for your convenience. And those are linked to our agendas, so you can find the item of interest to you. And then lastly, through your telephone, you can call a number called Council Phone. That number is 213-621-CITY. And you can listen into our council meetings and to any of our committee meetings as well. All of our committees and the members for each are available online, and you can sign up to get agendas for any of those committees or for the City Council emailed to you for your convenience as well. We have cards in the back of the room, and there are also cards that are available to the public in Van Nuys and San Pedro. If you'd like to be heard on any of the items that we are discussing today or voting on, feel free to fill out a card and give it to one of the sergeants at arms or the city staff, and we will be sure to include that. If it's an item that's already had a public hearing, there won't be a public speaker cards unless a council member reopens that public hearing. But for all items that have not yet had a public hearing, a card from the public automatically opens that public hearing. Finally, there's a section of the meeting called General Public Comment, which is for items that are not on the agenda, but nevertheless under our jurisdiction, and each speaker can come and speak for 2 minutes, usually on those items as well, or on any of those concerns. I want to thank the council members who are here on time. Council rules do say that council members should be in their seats at the beginning of the meeting. This meeting was agendized for 10 a.m., so thank you to council members Huizar, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, and Wesson for being here, as well as Mr. Smith. We are still awaiting Mr. Alarcon, Mr. Cardenas, Ms. Hahn, Mr. Koretz, and Mr. Zine. As soon as one of them is here, we will have 10 members, or 2/3 of our 15-member body. That constitutes a quorum, and Mr. Cardenas is here, so Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Hahn, Huizar, Koretz, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Wesson, Zine, Garcetti, 10 members present, and a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. First order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
All right, Mr. Cardenas moves and Mr. Huizar seconds without objection. Those will be approved. Next order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Parks moves and Ms. Perry approves seconds without objection. That will be approved as well. If we can run through the agenda, please.
And, Mr. President, before beginning the regular agenda, there is a request to continue to the items. Item number 10, a request to continue that matter to October 21st.
Is there any objection to continuing item number 10, colleagues, till the 21st? Seeing none, we will continue item number 10. And the other item?
The other item is item number 45, one of the closed session items, a request to continue that matter to October 28th.
Okay, is there any objection to continuing 45? Seeing none, that will be continued to the 28th. We can go back to the other items.
On the regular agenda, item number 1 is an item noticed for public hearing, and there are cards on that.
Okay, we'll call that special for a card from the public. Next item, please.
Next items are items for which public hearings have been held, items 2 through 26. Items 2, 3, and 4 are commissioners, and reports have been submitted on those items. Do you wish to hold those on the desk?
Yes, please. Let's hold the commissioners on the desk.
And I believe 12 council members will be present today. Do you wish to hold the ords on 5 through 9?
Mr. Zine is here, so we can go ahead and take up any of those items. Mr. Parks, special.
Mr. President, on item 45, it's in closed session. That's an issue in which
we continued that?
Yeah, we can do it in open session if there's no questions.
I think there's
it's
been
a matter of receiving money as opposed to us paying money. 46, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's 46, okay.
Yes.
All right, when we get to that, I will make sure we can do that in open session. We like receiving money. That's a good thing. Ms. Hahn, special.
26, please.
26 for Ms. Hahn. Mr. Reyes.
President,
If we can do 16, 17, 18 together.
16, 17, and 18, the three of them?
18, yes.
Okay.
We can do them all at once.
Call those special for Mr. Reyes, and we'll take those up together. Other specials, colleagues? This is 2 through 26. 2 through 26.
Mr. President, did you wish to hold the commissioners on the desk?
Yep. We're going to hold the commissioners.
Okay, that's 2, 3, and 4.
Any other specials, colleagues? If not, let's go ahead then and please take up the balance of the items. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, those items are approved. Next items, please.
Next items for which public hearings have not been held, items 27 through 44. 10 votes are required for consideration on those items, and council has cards. I believe there are cards on 27, 29, and 40.
Okay. We'll call those special for cards from the public. Ms. Perry.
For 1 week.
Okay, item 39, 1 week would take us to the 21st without objection. Ms. Hahn?
27, please.
27 for Ms. Hahn.
And also, Mr. President, I believe on item 42, there's an amendment in the works by Ms. Hahn.
42?
Yes.
Okay. Let's hold that on the table for the amendment on 42. Ms. Hahn. And any other specials, colleagues? If not, we'll open and close the hearings on the other items. If we can take up the balance, please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Those are approved. And if we can take up the next items, please, in item 46, I think is the only one. Mr. Parks, you move to accept the money on 46?
Settlement with a hospital that they owe us about $1.8 million. We settled for giving back not taking the penalty and part of the interest, but we're going to get a $1 million settlement up front and then monthly payments after that, roughly about $1.2 million.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, we'll go
and
ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, just for the record, that's
Yes.
City of LA versus LA Doctors Hospital, and it's $1,289,727.70.
Okay. Let's go ahead then. We'll move approval of that, unless anybody wants to hear it in closed session. Okay, let's go ahead then. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Okay, that is approved. We'll send that forthwith without objection. Mr. Smith?
Yes, items number 6 and 43 forthwith.
Okay, 6 and 43 will send forthwith without objection. And we'll do the commissioners, and then we'll come right back for public comment just after that. So let's go ahead and please take up the first commissioner. That's number 2. And that's Ms. Serrano. If you'd like to come forward. Come on forward to the table here, and like to... This went through the Housing Committee, I believe. Mr. Wesson.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Mr. Reyes and Mr. Alarcon and I had a very informative and exciting committee meeting today. And before I say anything about Ms. Serrano, I want to give kudos to the mayor for selecting 3 phenomenal individuals to serve in various committees and boards in the city of Los Angeles. Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I would appreciate some silence.
If we could ask the sergeants at arms to assist us on both sides of the rope, if folks could move their conversations out.
If you could hold my time.
Absolutely, always. If we could have folks either move their conversations outside, unless it's critical business, and staff members as well, so we can hear the business at hand. Thank you. Mr. Wesson.
I can't think of anything that would be more important than the discussion where it relates to individuals that we are going to appoint or not appoint to the commissions that help us run the city of Los Angeles. In this case, we have an individual, Mr. LaBonge, who grew up in Southern California, did not go to a Los Angeles city high school, but she is from the Southern California area. She graduated from Loyola Marymount, and I believe a degree in psychology. She then began to do a variety of non-profit work where Mr. Alarcon and I had an association with her was in the state, and Mr. Cardenas, I think Mr. Cardenas might have still been there. In the assembly, Jackie Goldberg had introduced a bill that would ban mascots from various high schools being named after Native Americans. And she indicated today that when they had a discussion with Mr. Alarcon in the hall, the young Native Americans were so impressed with him. Now, I was upset with her because, Mr. President, she did not bring them to my office. I was Speaker at the time.
They would have been very impressed.
I told her, that's exactly what I told her, that had she brought them to me, they would have been equally impressed. But this is an individual with a lot of energy, a lot of commitment, and an awful lot of knowledge, a person that I think will be an asset to this board. So with that, I would request a unanimous vote for her appointment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Wesson. Anybody else wishing to be heard on the nomination? Well, with that, let's go ahead and prepare the roll then and tabulate the vote.
14 eyes.
Congratulations and welcome aboard. Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Labange. And Mr. Labange does want to know which high school that was, so if you'll consult him, please, on that. Our next nominee is Mr. Fern. If you'd like to come forward to the table, I'd like to recognize again our chair of our Housing Committee, Mr. Wesson.
You know, the way that it worked in committee today, in fact, I have to just congratulate Juliana. The way that it worked in committee today, Mr. Fern was the first commissioner that we interviewed. And he was so phenomenal that I thought that it was going to be very difficult for Ms. Serrano to meet the mark that he set. But she, in fact, did. Today, like I said, was a banner day for commissioners in the city of Los Angeles. But, Mr. Labange, this young man grew up in the city of Los Angeles. He is a Loyola High School Cubby. Okay, and then went on to Harvard. He is extremely intelligent, committed to the city of Los Angeles. He still is associated with Loyola High School. He began his public service back with Mayor Bradley after the riots in 1992. I think that Mr. Ferns brings a solid background and an ability to articulate his position. This individual is willing to be in contact with the community, and I have to say, one of the most impressive interviews or discussions that we had today. I jokingly said to him that a person came up to me yesterday and said, "Who is this guy? Do you know this guy?" That person was the head of the agency, Cecilia, who is here today. And I told her, I don't have a clue who this guy is. But I am so glad that I met him, and also to find out that he has a close association with another Loyola Cubby that worked for me for 6 years. Members, I would highly recommend that we take advantage of this phenomenal opportunity and unanimously appoint this young man to the CRA Board of Commissioners. Ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Wesson. We have 3 members on the queue. Mr. Koretz is our first, and then Mr. Labange, and then Mr. Cardenas.
Well, I'm pleased to have another CD5 resident as a commissioner from Cheviot Hills. And I just had one question I wanted to ask. You have expertise in the hospitality real estate area. How do you think that can help you in your work on the CRA?
Well, fortunately, I have background experience in it, but excuse me, but do not conduct business in the city of Los Angeles as it relates to that. So I think that's a big positive. I've had great experience both on the development side, working through the development process, working through dealing with environmental impact assessments. And one of the things that Mr. Wesson alluded to is my work with former Mayor Tom Bradley, which was we undertook a study for Rebuild Los Angeles that was to examine economic development opportunities specifically for the city of Los Angeles for disadvantaged areas coming out of the riots. So I've studied the city. I know many of the development areas quite well, and certainly my real estate background will be a tremendous asset.
Well, I think you're going to be a great commissioner, and I look forward to having you on the CRA.
Pleasure. Thank you, Mr. Kurtz.
Mr. Labange.
Thank you very much. I know our Commissioner Serrano went to St. Lucie, she told me there, but Loyola is one of the great learning schools, one of the oldest high schools, if not the oldest high school in Los Angeles, and they have a service component there, which is so important to each one who graduates there. Now that many public schools and other institutions are copied, which is so important. But growing up in Los Angeles, how do you see the city change? How would you vision as a commissioner how you could help this agency as you go on? Hold my time.
Great. Well, you pointed out the spirit of Loyola and what they do. It's called the Christian Action Movement. And one of the focuses of being at Loyola was building men that could be men for others. That's the entire focus. When I look at the city I grew up in South Los Angeles. I went to school at St. Cecilia's on 42nd in Normandy. Grew up right at Florence and Normandy. And I've watched the city change dramatically over the last 20 years. I think there's a real opportunity, and the CRA has done some amazing things, particularly under Celia's leadership. But I think there's a tremendous opportunity to look at how we can use the city and the CRA to look at real estate projects for also creating jobs, which is a real need given the current economic times that we're in. I'm eager to get going, eager to continue to get involved in some of the green projects that they're engaged in presently. And I think this is a city with all the resources one could ever hope to have. It's just a matter of lassoing those and getting the energy behind it appropriately.
Yeah, I also want to say, trying to figure out the manufacturing challenge, because there were many manufacturing jobs that were erased from Maine to California in the challenges that the United States has faced economically, but trying to bring some of those back in the areas there. I also would say we're very strongly supportive of filming here to also find maybe some locations that the CRA could help spur, have a live studio of streets, because I know we have certain restrictions now that challenge filmmakers to make them look to other places, but maybe they could find that. That has been discussed with your department. And then also looking at the transit corridors and what you could do to maximize that and work with the MTA to maximize all issues transit. I think it's real important. We had representatives from the airport department here recently, and I asked who was the general manager, who's the person who's the point on transit, and it was kind of shared. Now they have a point person on transit. Hopefully there could be a commissioner who could look on that, who encourages that aspect how to integrate it into what you could do with the CRA. Absolutely. In the district that I represent, there's been tremendous work by those in the North Hollywood area to work to change that community and drive it. Under Mr. Garcetti's leadership, the Hollywood area, which I buffer, has certainly changed and make a strong difference there. And we just worked this morning in the East Hollywood area, which has the area of Beverly to Vermont up to Hollywood, looking at that corridor, integrating to the community college of City College in a more positive aspect and contributing, which they try to do every day. So I wish you great success. Thank you. Thank you for your service to this city.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Mr. Cardenas is next.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Appreciate it, Kenneth, you volunteering your time to the city. You obviously have a relationship with the city already, especially on this issue. But I wanted to ask you a question. I wasn't involved in politics when Rebuild LA was around, but I've heard a lot of things about it. But one of the things is I was asking one of my colleagues as I'm sitting here looking at some of the activity and some of the support you've given to the city in the past. When it comes to Rebuild Los Angeles, can you give us some examples of some of the long-term projects that Rebuild LA actually got off the ground and are actually flourishing today?
I wasn't actively involved with Rebuild Los Angeles. We produced a white paper that was used by Rebuild Los Angeles. So our focus and our challenge was to take the city of Los Angeles as bound by the 10 freeway and the 105 and the 405 to the 110, and look at what are the sources of competitive advantage that the city offers, and what are the programs that we could potentially use to drive economic opportunity within this corridor. That was our focus. One of the things that came out of our study was the use of using alternative areas within the city to create sound studios. That happened with Raleigh Studios going just outside of in El Segundo when they built the additional studio space out there. We also had a number of other projects that we identified and talked about, including the multi-use projects that were to exist along the southern part of the city along the Crenshaw corridor.
El Segundo is not part of the city of LA, so this Rebuild LA was a county project or a city project?
Well, Rebuild LA was a city project. Our study, I did a field study that was geared to look at building the city of Los Angeles. That's what it was used for. People out of that took what we had done and they went out and did that. Now, the studio that got built was a direct outcome of our project. They actually took the results of it, it was published, and they went out and did something out of this back in the early 1990s.
That's really cool to see somebody take what's on paper and actually make it happen. But it sounds like the main focus was to try to make that happen in South LA.
That was the main focus.
But it didn't happen there. It happened somewhere else. That's not your fault.
It did not happen in the city of Los Angeles.
But that's my main point. And the reason why we have a CRA department and the reason why we have tens of millions of dollars pouring through that department and hopefully pouring into actual real tangible projects is to create jobs, correct? Is to create and assist in flourishing housing at various levels, be it at market or for low-income families, et cetera. Those are some of the focuses that perhaps your white paper touched on.
Correct.
Okay. But the reason why I'm asking these questions is because as a council member and working with CRA, there's a lot of wonderful things that they do, but sometimes what happens is I get the feeling that we're missing the mark. And I think when we're missing the mark is when we are talking one way, but we're watching our actions go in a different direction. But what I would like to see from the commissioners is I'd like to see, including yourself, I believe that you will be successful, and I am supporting your commission appointment. What I'm hoping is that the commission actually start to spend more time looking at what the department's doing and where their actual actions are, and see that that's reflective of the policy and the statements that the CRA department is actually stating, and that the CRA department is actually mandated to do. Absolutely. And another thing that I'm a bit frustrated with is the fact that representing part of the San Fernando Valley, we have some areas that certainly deserve just as much as any other area of Los Angeles some of these CRA infusions, some of the tactics and some of the technical support that CRA should be giving the Valley, and we do get some. But I do get frustrated, for example, when I see the CRA board and the CRA staff, all of a sudden they take the generic funds and they say these funds are for these kinds of projects. And then looking back over the last 12 months or 18 or 24 months, we see that 90+% of that money was spent in only one part of Los Angeles, exclusive of, for example, where I'm at in the San Fernando Valley. But yet I raise my hand because I'm at fault as well, because many of those decisions actually go through the council as well. But what I would like to see is the impetus in the beginning of all that process to be a lot more consistent with what we say we're doing, and then see that we actually bring it to fruition consistently with what we said our objectives were.
Understood.
You have a tall order, a lot of responsibilities, and also, I don't know if my staff shared with you, but I'd like to sit down with you individually and go over these things as well.
I would welcome that.
Thank you. And once again, thank you for your volunteerism.
Thank you. Ms. Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I did want to rise and thank you for agreeing to serve on what I think is a very, very important commission here in the city of Los Angeles. I think our challenge is going to be resources. Our challenge is going to be to protect the revenue that is duly ours and to keep Sacramento from taking those dollars. And I just wanted to tell you that for me, I've got a project area in Wilmington, the Wilmington Industrial Park, which is a over 30-year CRA project area, which still, in my opinion, has not totally achieved its complete potential. And again, I know it's about resources, I know it's about attention and time, but certainly that's an area that I still think has not reached its potential and has great ability, I think, in terms of creating good jobs in that area. We have a project area in the San Pedro area, which has been fairly active. But my Watts project area is the one that I think is so ripe for really bringing together resources, bringing together talent, bringing together some attention to really make that happen. We have the Watts Star Theater, which is something that we've really been trying to bring to that community for a long time. There is no theater there. This is a theater that not only will show first-rate movies, but it will have a educational piece to it where the young people in Watts can learn about what goes on the other side of the camera. We also have the Cultural Crescent area where the Watts Towers is, that we're really trying to, again, improve. I was just at an unbelievable event on Sunday, the Tony Hawk Foundation, at this mansion in Beverly Hills, and they were raising money for the skate park in Watts. And that's going to be something that will bring so much importance to the young people there. I mean, there are kids, as I'm sure you know, that have nothing to do, and when we leave them unattended after school, we know that the influence of gangs is tremendous, and that really does affect a community. I mean, that really affects economic development in a community. That really affects jobs in a community. So that's something that's really important. So I just wanted to outline some of the major issues that I'm concerned about, and again, I know the resources are thin, and I know we don't even know if more money will, be taken from us from Sacramento. But I just think we have our own economic stimulus package, and it's the CRA. You are the agency that really can stimulate the economy, can stimulate jobs, and bring development to blighted communities across Los Angeles, neighborhood by neighborhood. So it's a heavy burden. It's a huge responsibility. But and I just want to tell you, we've got great people working in the CRA, great people that are on staff that I think really do their best. But love to have the commission really try to pull together our resources in a tough time and make some of these dreams a reality for our residents of Los Angeles.
Great. Well, I appreciate your vision. There's no shortage of opportunities in this city as far as where new development and new thoughts and ideas can be put to work. So I'm eager to get my sleeves rolled up and get it up to speed on where things sit today. I echo what you said about the staff. I think there's a great staff in place there, and I'm looking forward to learning how to move it and helping move things forward.
Right. Charlotte Bremer in Watts is just doing an outstanding job with what limited resources she has, but she has got as much passion and much vision for that community as really anybody I've seen in a really, really long time. So we want to make sure she stays there.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hahn. Mr. Reyes is our last speaker.
Thank you, Council President. It's a little loud, sorry. Woke everybody up. First, I want to thank you for your support, and I appreciate our conversation this morning. But I do want to take this opportunity to kind of frame some of the challenges and opportunities you have in other parts of downtown Los Angeles, central LA. When you look at the Central City North area, when you look at the state's investment, close to $90 million have been already spent in transferring old rail yards into park space. Approximately 40 acres in Taylor Yard, about 32 acres in the cornfield adjacent to Chinatown, just north of Little Tokyo and downtown LA proper. But you also have in there an amazing change and shift in land use patterns. There's new categories identified as urban villages that will allow for higher densities for commercial mixed use. It complements the clean tech movement that the mayor has been speaking to. And as you look at these green fields, and you look at the change in these zoning patterns, you see a whole range of opportunities become very real. So when we talk about how we get the city moving forward, how we create jobs, the tools are right there. And the biggest toolbox is found in the CRA. I can share that with you because it was through their stewardship that we acquired a piece of land next to Downey Park where we are expanding not only green space, but spaces that begin to stimulate these new relationships for job development, job creation. Department of Water and Power owns a huge chunk of land there, close to 5 city blocks. The Housing Authority owns about another 8 city blocks. In between that, you have other uses that are essentially dormant. But by the end of next year, we will have rezoned that whole corridor. So you look at the clean tech movement, the open space, the new zoning, and plus you have a slight concern with how the high-speed rail is going to run through this area, which is a concern that speaks to how we do not penalize this investment, but actually accentuate and leverage what we already done, which is something we're trying to get the high-speed rail authority to acknowledge. We want to create jobs. We want to stop that project, but make it another stimuli for that area. So these are the kinds of opportunities that we have. And I believe the CRA is going to be one of the driving forces as long as you have the kind of community input, community involvement, neighborhood councils, and all the different advocacy groups that have been involved in here for decades. So I look forward to working with you. I want to compliment Cecilia and her staff in moving some of these projects forward. They've done it rather quietly. We just formed the River Corporation, and so we got these tools in front of us. It's exciting times, and I think we can help get the city out of this hole. We can realize our own potential and generate our own revenue within our own backyard. So I look forward to working with you.
I look forward to it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reyes. And that is our last speaker on the queue. So with that, I think we're ready for a vote. Let's go ahead and open the roll on this nomination, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Congratulations, and thank you again for your willingness to serve. Appreciate you very much. Round of applause for our new commissioner. And Mr. Zine, I think, has an introduction before our last commissioner, and then our public comment. Mr.
Thank you,
Zine?
Mr. President. I do have, and I'm very proud to have, a good friend who used to be a city councilman down in Torrance. He's now at the State Assembly, the 53rd District. And I'd like to introduce Ted Lieu, who has joined us this morning to bid us hello from Sacramento. Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Councilmember Zine, and let me thank the Los Angeles City Council for your public service and all you do. I know you have the best interests of Angelenos at heart, and since I came from local government, I understand the difficult challenges you're facing. That's why in Sacramento, I went to the Speaker's office and said, we cannot take gas tax funds from cities, especially since we weren't going to pay those back. Very pleased Assembly stopped that from happening. Second thing I said is we can't early release 40,000 prisoners because that's just going to put more pressure on you all. It's going to put more pressure on the county. And I'm going to make sure that this water deal that is being crafted, that L.A. gets its fair share. Happy to have authored many bills sponsored by the City of Los Angeles. I will keep doing that for you. Anything I can do to help the City of L.A., please let me know. Thank you so much.
Ted Lieu, State Assemblyman here saying hello to people of Los Angeles. Thank you, Ted. And we have the former Speaker here, Herb Weston. We have Paul Koretz. We have Mr. Alarcon, Mr. Cardenas, so we love our Sacramento people who come back home. Correct. Oh, yeah, I said Paul Koretz. They come back home to Los Angeles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zine, and thank you, Mr. Lieu. Always a pleasure to have you here. Our last commissioner is item number 4. If we can ask Mr. Cha to come forward, and I'll recognize Mr. Wesson again.
Again, thank you, Mr. President and members. Each and every one of us, I'm sure, have, spoke before a crowd and we had to follow some phenomenal speaker or what have you. I can remember speaking at the Democratic Convention here in Los Angeles, and I had to follow Andrew Cuomo and Jesse Jackson and Mayor Willie Brown of San Francisco. And I had to say to myself, now how can I follow that? How can I hold my own? I'm sure today that Mr. Cha felt exactly that same way, that he had to follow Mr. Fern and Ms. Serrano. But he did it, and he did it with class, he did it with style, and this man is a very serious man. He grew up in Orange County, attended UC Irvine, went to law school at Loyola Marymount, lives in Councilmember Reyes' district, works in the Koreatown area, the part of the city that I'm fortunate enough to represent. He serves on the Downtown Neighborhood Council, and he's president-elect of the Korean American Democratic Club. But also, he is a veteran of Desert Storm. I think one of the things that impressed members of the committee most today was when he stressed the importance of balance as he moves forward doing the job that the mayor has appointed him to do. Again, it is my pleasure and my honor to rise and recommend to my fellow colleagues that with a unanimous vote that we confirm Mr. Cha's appointment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weston. Any other members wishing to be heard on this nomination? If not, we thank you for your patience, Mr. Cha, and let's go ahead and prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That is approved. Congratulations. Thank you very much. We'll next go to public comment. Dr. Clyde Williams is our first speaker. Then we'll hear from Brad Billick. Oh, and I'm sorry, Dr. Williams, come on up, but hold on 2 seconds. We have a group of young people who is here that Mr. Labange is going to...
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and Dr. Williams, if you would there. We have a very special class from Temple, Israel, one of the finest schools in the whole city. I ask them all to rise. Temple, Israel, Hollywood, 6th grade. Their teachers, Elisa Barnes and Glenda Dragan, and also a very famous student there, Olivia Goodman. Where's Olivia Goodman right there? Let's give her a hand. She lives in the district and does a good job and is a good citizen of the 4th. Please welcome Temple Israel of Hollywood. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Thank you as well for your accommodation. Dr. Williams, our first speaker for public comment, then Brad Billick.
No problem. I was there once before.
Thank you.
Dr. Clyde Williams, 4115 Barrett Road, El Sereno. Oh, veto Senate Bill 545. What happened? Well, the right decision for the wrong reasons. Now we're back to Caltrans's geotechnical feasibility study and task order 5, which doesn't seem to be relevant anymore, but is still part of Caltrans's shell game. Measure R. Hey, the 710 has now a bill of $5.8 billion that will come out partly out of Measure R. The City Council may be considering a resolution by various council members for moving the south portal out of El Sereno and making it fully in El Hamra, finishing south of Valley Boulevard. Okay. That would also mean Zone 3 will become the prominent zone, the original route, back to the beginning, shell game. Okay, the Board of Public Works, who never had a representative in any of the technical advisory committees, are now going to assign somebody to at least see what the technical side is. Okay, task order 5. It specifies also considering the public-private partnership. We used to call it the private plundering the public. Why does the private need the public? Well, it's called eminent domain and bonds, whether they be revenue bonds, general obligation bonds, or some other bonds. Those bonds will be paid by the toll, they say. However, our estimates of the toll will be about $15 each way to go 5 miles. Seems a little excessive. There's also a matter that the private will not correspond to and will not work on the local employment hiring.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Williams. Brad Billick is our next speaker. After Mr. Billick will be Arnold Sachs. Very good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak and be heard. I'll be sending a copy of this to the city clerk to be attached to the record. My comments are in regards to attaching minimum standards to the new LAX living wage ordinance. I think changing it from a dollar amount, which is now set at $4.50 per hour, to a plan with minimum standards will cause problems. In order to qualify for a medical plan, companies will need to submit a census, which includes age and gender. Companies with a younger workforce will get better rates than those with an older workforce. Since contracts are awarded on the basis of low bid wins, companies will be encouraged to hire younger employees, which will discriminate against older employees. Some companies may even fire their older workforce and replace them with younger workers, of course never blaming the termination on age. The difference in cost of health benefits for a group that averages 30 years of age versus 50 years of age is substantial. This can easily be the difference between winning and losing a contract bid. Since companies depend on the income from LAX contracts, they'll be forced to do what's necessary to be more competitive. The solution is to leave the benefits tied to an hourly amount with no minimum requirements. Companies will then be encouraged to spend as much of the $4.50 per hour on benefits as possible, because whatever is not spent on benefits must be paid in cash wages to the employee. The cash wages are then subject to payroll burden, which includes workers' comp, state and federal payroll taxes. This will keep the playing field level between those companies with younger workers and older workers, since those companies with lower benefit costs will have higher payroll burden costs. I therefore recommend, to avoid a situation where companies will be forced to hire younger employees, that the living wage ordinance be left without minimum standards and just be based on the $4.50 per hour rate. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have somebody from the airport who's here as well who can speak with you on that. Thank you. Arnold Sachs is next, and then we'll go to Van Nuys, and Bruce Darien will be our next speaker after that. Good morning.
Good morning. Arnold Sachs. Thank you. And I want to thank you for yesterday correcting me on two items. One, regarding the fee waivers at Dodger Stadium. You mentioned that they would be included now. But the question I have, because they're on today's Transportation Committee meeting, when was that held in committee? At what time was it decided to reintroduce fees for the police and the traffic control officers at Dodger Stadium? And you mentioned the Hollywood Bowl and the Greek Theater. And since almost all those seasons are over, when does that fee program come into effect? But more importantly is you discussed the item. So please, maybe you could explain for the public's benefit and the workers who are getting their furlough days how you manage to miss not the elephant in the room, but the pink mohawk mastodon that is Staples Center, LA Live, and Memorial Coliseum in your new program. How could you miss that on those events? That's almost 300 events a year right now. But you corrected me. And let me remind you, regarding the LA Live and Staples Center, AEG paid for compliance officers in Carson for the Home Depot Center. I'm pretty sure the sheriff gets paid for traffic control and Carson gets paid for traffic control there. And then you also corrected me regarding the oil pipeline item yesterday. I mentioned the fee on fluids traveling through the pipeline. You countered by saying there was a fee proposed for oil extraction. The pipeline that was considered yesterday isn't a pipeline that's coming that would carry oil as extracted in the city of LA. Maybe we can get a show of hand on how many working oil wells there are in the city by district. Then we get an idea of how much money is involved. It's a boondoggle for administrative fees that'll collect nothing.
Thank you. And just to clarify my comments from yesterday, there's two fees. There's a fee that exists for the movement just of the fluids, and then secondly, I was letting you know as a point of information that you might have found interesting that Ms. Hahn also introduced a further motion on extraction. So both actually do exist, and I do believe LA Live and the Coliseum are also included. I just had seen directly the emails on the Bowl and on Dodger Stadium. Bruce Darien is our next speaker in Van Nuys, and that will be our last public comment speaker. Good morning, Mr. Darien.
Good morning. Last fall, while I was gathering signatures to get on the ballot for mayor, I had the opportunity to speak with the great Coach John Wooden, who graciously signed my petition. I explained to Coach Wooden my trials and tribulations in exposing the high-level government corruption regarding Malibu Pier and contracts with the state of California. Coach Wooden responded. I asked him what he thought I should do. Coach Wooden responded, "Don't ever give up." Those words rang clear with me. Happy birthday to Coach John Wooden on his 99th birthday. And I'd like to go on. This week, my petitions for writ of certiorari were filed previously and were docketed in the United States Supreme Court. The defendants will have till November 5th to file responses. And I'm asking the public here this morning to get involved. Hundreds of thousands of people, if not more, know about high-level government corruption regarding these issues, which are complex, gone over many years. The city, county, state, federal governments are well aware of it. And if you can weigh in on it, call Brad Sherman's office. Lane Sherman said that she would do whatever she could if she could weigh in on it through her son. Call your council members, your senators and Congress people. These issues have affected, in part, what's transpired here and the result of where we're at today. The theft of public funds. It's gone on since the beginning of time, but we as Americans can't allow the public fleecing of our resources with impunity. Thank you.
Thank you. That'll end our general public comment, and we'll take the first item called special. That's item number 1. We do have some cards from the public on that, and I'll hand that over to Mr. Zine to chair, and Dr. Clyde Williams. I'll come forward on item number 1. Dr. Williams, item number 1.
Dr. Clyde Williams, 4115 Barrett Road, El Sereno, Northeast LA. Here we go again. A variance, an exemption. For whom? Horses? Come on. We had a single or 3 roosters. Now we have how many horses? Okay. Why? Does everybody have horses anymore? No. Only certain council districts have horses. I hope they are providing cistern water to collect the rainfall that we've gotten, because that would provide a lot of water for them. But why have the public pay for private decisions to live in those districts, in those areas, private decisions to have a pet, a large pet? Yes. Another private decision. Why have the public pay for these? Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Doctor. Councilmember Jan Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm looking for Mr. Freeman. There you go. If you can, Mr. Freeman, if you can, as she's coming to the table, I wanted to just chat a little bit and then tell you what I'd like for us to do today. The item before us today is about shortage year water rates, and there are several proposed water rate actions, including a low-income lifeline subsidy, 15% increase, medical use allocation for special medical equipment use, council review increase from 15 days to 30 days, technical adjustment for Tier 2 rates, and the horse allocation subsidy. Now, the department has asked that this item be sent back to them for further review, and I think given that this is a bad economy and with new management, this is a very prudent request, because my concern is essentially what this amounts to is a rate increase. I want Mr. Freeman just to give us a little bit of information about the balance of labor costs juxtaposed with operations and maintenance costs, because I have a few recommendations I'd like to share with him to make a better assessment of this proposal. So you can give us a minute, just maybe a few seconds, talking about labor costs and whether or not they've affected your operations and maintenance costs.
They're about
Stop my time.
They're about 75% of our O&M costs, labor costs are, though they dramatically affect our total costs.
And as you move forward, I would expect you're going to develop some strategies in-house to make some adjustments to reduce your operational costs. Is that something you're thinking about?
More than thinking about it, if my good friend Councilman Smith will forgive me, I am the Inspector General and the Ratepayer Advocate put together.
Oh, okay.
I intend to go over the budget like it hadn't been gone over in a long, long time, because my customers are all hurting, and I cannot come before Ms. Perry or you or anyone else and ask for a rate increase for either electricity or water until we have gone over the budget and cut it to the bone. And that is an exercise I started yesterday afternoon, and we will persist. And so I had the misfortune of being at the table the last time we got guidance from you, and I heard what you said. So we're into cutting costs and coming back to this council with something that I can look you in the eye and say we really need it.
Well, let me give you some points that I'd like for you to take
Yes, ma'am.
back. Just some recommendations that I think would help the council and you and the ratepayers make a better assessment of this proposal. The DWP's presentation shows current first and second tier rates with the water procurement adjustment, or the WPA, and the mechanism, that's the mechanism which allows DWP to purchase water from the Metropolitan Water District. Now, it would help us a great deal to see a chart and an analysis showing how these new rates would impact the ratepayers in both tiers. I think everyone would like to know how the revenue generated from the last two water rate increases was used. Whether or not the cost of water that we purchase from MWD has gone up or down since 2007. Because if I read your payroll budget correctly, in the water division, the payroll increased from $259.3 million to $293.8 million for years 07 and 08 and 09 respectively. So your payroll's gone up, it hasn't gone down. So I have to hear from you how you intend to adjust that. And in that same budget, in the power division, that payroll budget increased from $581 million to $656 million, respectively. And then I want you to explain to us where that increase came from. I'd also like a better understanding of the cost of the subsidies, what the 15% discount means so the public can better understand, because I can't find any numbers in the budget to substantiate the savings on that. I'd like obviously more transparency, and have you come back with a proposal that shows that your O&M costs have been adjusted, including the salaries portion.
Thank you. Those comments are very helpful.
Hold my time.
That's one of the reasons I withdrew this increase is in one day's time I couldn't understand it myself. So
Okay, well that's not a good sign. But a better review of the rate restructuring process, a better review and analysis of the water rate pass-through charges, and whether or not they can be applied equitably across all tiers, and that I'm going to suggest to you that you resubmit, scrap this proposal, just scrap it.
yes, ma'am.
And then resubmit.
Music's my ears.
Okay. Resubmit an ordinance that will come to council that provides the allocations, the subsidies, as previously proposed, within the water shortage year rates. If you want, I'll get you a clean copy of my notes, because I don't think you can write as fast as I can talk.
No, not left-handed, no, ma'am.
Okay, and so that's what I'd like to do today.
You are very gentle. Thank you.
Okay, well, you're just getting started. Yes, this is just your first week. So I'll get you. Yeah, we can continue. Can you get this done in 30 days?
Ma'am?
Can you get this done in 30 days?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll see you back here in 30 days.
Could I have just another minute? There's been a lot of interest expressed in a contract between the department and Mr. Nahai for 90 days. There are copies of the contract that I wish to make available to the members of the council.
That's not on the agenda right now. Okay, that's coming to committee next Wednesday. That'll be in the Energy and Environment Committee.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
If I'm out of order, I apologize.
All right,
I just wanted to make it
don't get
public.
wild on me now. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Garcetti, followed by Mr. Smith and Mr. Reyes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zine, and thank you, Madam Chair, for your stellar leadership of our Energy and Environment Committee, and for, I think you guys are a match made in heaven, which is why they're, straight speakers, straight talkers, folks who are focused on the bottom line. But on behalf of the council, thank you, Ms. Perry, for your work in putting a brake on this, which I think reflected a lot of our feelings. First of all, we should probably praise the rain that is falling down, because a lot of the water issues that we've had in the city have been because of lack of rain, so it's a good day to be talking about it. But we shouldn't let up on our
Not a bad first day's work, was it?
I was going to say, Mr. Freeman brought the rain. If you can just do that once a week for the next 50 weeks, we'll be okay. But short of that, I think, we've been very consistent, certainly I've been very consistent, that I want to see a utility that has cheap, reliable, and green water and power. Those are the three things that I think the people of Los Angeles deserve. And as you have felt out there, and not because there haven't been good people at DWP doing the work, there is a real anger in this city right now. There's an anger about a lot of things in this country, but in particular, I think it's an anger that many of us feel around here, too, about saying we have to stop doing business the way that we have. We have to pull these things back and say it isn't an either or. It isn't that we get reliable water or that we get water conservation or cheap rates. It isn't that we get a well-run department or inexpensive power. We can have it all. We actually should, and part of, I think, the frustration, Mr. Weezar's motion on a ratepayer advocate, which I'm a strong supporter of, the idea of the Inspector General, I believe that Mr. Smith will be talking to, and I was happy to second. That's not something to fear. I think you are that guy, but you're going to be there for 6 months. And, in looking at what the department should have, all of us have checks and balances, and I think that's a healthy thing for the people. The LA Times has a reader's advocate. The city has a controller and a city attorney. We have a legislative and executive branch. So I hope that the commission will look and really pass this as something which is that helpful thinker, because we all get so embedded in our silos and we stay in this city or wherever we are for so long, we forget what it is like to be that average ratepayer out there saying, I don't have any connection with these things. Why is it that I necessarily have to pay more to be green when solar power is finally penciling out at the same price as a lot of our power, certainly at the peak rate? When we look at creative ways of financing things, we want our pipes to be fixed, absolutely, and we've ignored that for too long. We want to have a green power and we want to have water that is conserved, and so we can continue to maintain life here in Los Angeles, no question of that. But we are at a pivotal moment in our history, and it's great to have you at the table, Mr. Freeman, because now is the time for the department to really reevaluate its commitment to ratepayers, and I think that's been lost. The vision of becoming the nation's greenest and most efficient municipal utility, we've talked a lot about, but we haven't been able to marry those two things together. It's kind of like the vision has been, well, we'll drag the ratepayers along even if they don't know better. Well, the ratepayers do know well. We've had very articulate people who've come here. Some things we know and some things we don't, but collectively this city knows a lot about itself, about what they should be paying, and about what they should demand in terms of management. And I think that's what the focus of this is today. So I thank Ms. Perry for that. I absolutely, in that report, would love to hear the things that she put out there. Report back on the thoughts on the ratepayer advocate, on advanced metering and billing infrastructure, and maybe as we look at the power side of things, you can include some of the energy efficiency and renewable portfolio standard pieces, and where you see planting the flag to be able to be at the cutting edge. There are folks right now that go, as you know, that go to other utilities, go to other cities, and get stuff done right away. I was just talking to somebody who's working with a solar power person, and there's a mile of roofs being built in El Segundo by Northrop Grumman. It took them 14 days to pencil something with them to put them on there. And they come to the city of L.A., and there's a long process, and it's drawn out, and we're not sure where we're at. So whether it's water or power, we deserve better. We can do better. I think we're in good hands, but I think let's bring that back, and let's put in place somebody who will be an advocate for the people at the department as well, not just the general manager who's interim and a great advocate for the people, but somebody forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I have just one word?
Of course.
I think that I'd be remiss if I didn't speak up for the rank and file workers at DWP that do nothing less than go out and repair those pipes right away, bring the lights back on, work real hard, and are doing a terrific job. We, the management, are in the process of shaping up. But I'm sure that none of the comments that are made about DWP are intended to apply to the 8,000 or 9,000 people that do nothing less but give us 99+% reliable service. We're selling 2 gallons of water for a penny in the desert, and our electric rates are a third lower than that of the county. There has been ratepayer advocates in charge of DWP for 50 or 60 years that have brought low-cost electricity to this city and kept us out of the blackouts 8 or 9 years ago, how quickly we forget. This is a very, very valuable department of the city of L.A., and I think a word or two of praise to the workers is in order.
That they're out there right now as we speak. When it is rainy and when it is windy, there's somebody right now restoring power. In Silver Lake, in my own community, we had a power outage yesterday. In the San Fernando Valley, where there was power outage, absolutely. And I think what we looked for in the leadership is restoring the luster and the pride, just as we went through this with other departments in the city, so that people can get back to that reputation that DWP has always enjoyed, but for whatever reason has disconnected somewhat from our ratepayers.
Thank you. We're on the same wavelength.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And to that, David, I want to add, I remember, because I was here at the time, unfortunately for me, but in the late 70s and early 80s, when the city council was brought a plan by DWP to add tremendous amount of power capacity to the city of L.A., and the newspapers blasted the city council for approving agreements in Utah and Arizona and Texas that were really far-thinking people actually came forward and said, here's a plan for the future, and it's that plan that kept us alive in the last decade. And I really, really commend the department for that. What we're talking about here today is, first of all, the basic request I had was to look at some other things that we needed to think about when we passed the Tier 2 rate increase proposal during the summer that hadn't been thought out. And I think we were kind of in a rush to judgment. And you mentioned that, you are the advocate, and we got a motion coming in. I totally trust you. You know our relationship. I have great respect for you and great trust for you. But you, like me, won't be here forever. And there's been general manager of that
Speak
department.
for yourself, sir.
Yeah, well, you may be. You may be. I wouldn't be surprised. But the point is that there have been general managers in the past that I have not agreed with. I don't think we're good managers of that department, have not helped the department. The difference is today we're in a different world.
You're
And that
correct.
began a decade ago in 2004 when Mr. Cardenas and I brought forward the plan that says before you do a rate increase, you're going to do that Euron type study. You're going to go to the public with it. And there's going to be a very open process. Water and Power has been a little resilient against change. And I think we need an agent of change. I know you will be that agent of change. We need that ongoing process. So that discussion will take place in Ms. Perry's committee. We need to really open up Water and Power like we're opening up this building to public input and to public ideas. And that can only be good for all of us. So I'm glad you're over there. I'm glad you're going to help us reel some of these issues in. Going back to my original motion again was on horses and big animals, which kind of started the snowball effect of discussions. But that was what it was all about. We need to be very thoughtful how we go forward on these things and not rush to judgment. And I think we rushed to judgment on how we do the water conservation program. It wasn't particularly well thought out. I have other motions in on 3-day watering rather than 2. Most cities are doing 3 days, not 2. Those are the kind of discussions I don't think we did a very good job of last summer. And I think we need, as a go-forward basis, to do that. And all that is encompassed now into this bigger snowball that's going through the committee again. But those are the discussions we want to have. And, David, I'm very happy you're there. And just to make it legal for the city attorney, on my time, there's something about your expenditure of some money for a contract. Would you explain that to me and hold my time?
Actually, that is outside of the subject matter description.
Not really.
I believe it is.
Okay. I tried, David. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Reyes, Mr. Alarcon, Mr. Rosendahl, Ms. Perry again, and Mr. Reyes, you got it.
Thank you, Council President. First, I want to thank you, Mr. Freeman. Thank you for your service to the city. Remember back when the Enrons of the world were raiding different states and they're about to enter our region, you stood strong and tall and protected the ratepayers, our citizenry, from what was going on, that debacle, and because of your strength, we were able to endure those storms. So I thank you for your hard work and your stewardship in that period of time. What I would like to express is a friendly amendment. I'd like to share this, Councilman Perry. If we're going to send this back, as part of the examination of the Tier 1 structure, we make sure that there are protections in place for those who are consuming the least. This is not only to protect the lower income users who tend to use less, and that's the majority of my district, being that they are at poverty level, family of 4, surviving on $21,000 a year, but also to incentivize conservation to the greatest extent possible. So we have ratepayers that are doing their due diligence. but I want to make sure we have protections for them and that we create incentives. And that's something we can include in the discussion. I would truly appreciate that as a friendly amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I really need the help of council members to help me educate people who come to this country from places where the water is not clean and who can't really afford it, but go out and buy water for $1.50 or more in the grocery store when our water is clean enough. And I need some new ideas how to get low-income people to understand that the water coming out of the faucet is clean and to use it, because my information is that there's a lot of people that, because we haven't succeeded in educating them, are spending money that they hardly don't have on water when we're selling it for 2 gallons for a penny. And if you have some ideas that help me tackle that problem, I'd really appreciate it.
And I would be more than happy to support you in that effort. I know I have one of the most diverse districts, and I think the neighborhoods all around downtown have a strong presence of diversity. But I also know we have challenges in that the water might be clean, but when they enter the private property, enter those apartments, the plumbing in those apartments are still dating back to the 20s and 30s, and what
So
comes
are
out
our
of the
pipes.
faucet. Yeah, so that's something we can work on and facilitate. And I'll look forward to working with you on that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Mr. Alarcon, followed by Mr. Rosendahl.
Mr. Freeman. Still ticking, huh?
Still remember when you saved me in Sacramento.
Members, it was shortly before Mr. Freeman arrived in Los Angeles that the City Council stood against an effort by the mayor to sell our DWP to Enron or Duke Power. And I distinctly remember Jackie Goldberg and I fighting a fierce battle to block that sale. Shortly after, Mr. Freeman came in and saved the city in many respects when the energy crisis hit, and the Enron debacle was clearly well known. That people forget that DWP was strong during that time, and it was because we didn't sell out to Enron and to Duke Power at the time. I remember meeting with the Duke Power guy, Julia Louis-Dreyfus's father, who owned it, a $5 billionaire guy, and I told him, if you can make money at it, why can't we do a better job?
And we did.
And we did, and so I want to thank Mr. Freeman for that experience. That as you said, short memories people forget. Also, on the purchase of bottled water, I introduced a bill to require that these companies that are selling this water let people know that that's basically faucet water. That's all it is, and it might have an additional little filter, but it doesn't really change any of the contents significantly. It might change the taste slightly, but it's basically faucet water, and I don't understand why so many people continue to purchase it when our water is just as good. Well, so I just want to say good luck to you, but I also wanted to address a comment by one of the public speakers when talking about the pets. Livestock is in a separate category than pets, and the purpose of this rate restructuring was to target those who are using water uselessly and who have the ability to conserve more. But when you're talking about providing water to animals or water for medicinal purposes, you cannot reduce the amount of use, and that's why we are creating a separate rate for them. People who have horses should not be penalized because they have no way to reduce the water consumption of their horses, and so that is the purpose of that policy, and I think I've supported it since we talked about it the first time, but we need to make it happen as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Alarcon. Mr. Rosendahl, followed by Mr. LeBonge.
Thank you, Mr. President. David, it's a pleasure to have you back, and you brought the rain with you, so you're a blessed fellow for us all. appreciate it. 6 months you're going to do this? Is that what you said?
Hopefully, we'll find a professional general manager the council will approve sooner than that, but that's the limit.
I see. Okay.
And I am not Dick Cheney. I'm going to pick myself. I'm not a candidate for that job.
Okay, but you're going to help in the selection and the recruitment, and you're going to get a professional, somebody with a sharp pencil who understands numbers, somebody who knows how to manage people, and also understands the issues, right?
Yes, sir. But the mayor will select the person, but we will recruit a few, and then the council will either approve or disapprove.
Right.
There's a process, but we intend to have an open process. We want to involve the community in the selection process, and we want to find somebody younger that can be the kind of manager you describe and stay with it for 15 or 20 years, hopefully.
Very good. Well, I look forward to that kind of recruitment because you are a living legend. You know, you've made a big difference in your whole life.
In my own mind, yeah.
Throughout the nation. There are three things that I want to make sure we always look at. I'm big into solar. My Mar Vista people are putting it on their roof. I'm about to.
Excuse me, Mr. Rosendahl. This should be a discussion of the water rates.
Oh, it's water rates, huh? Well, you know, we said that we got to deal with solar, okay? We also have to deal with a ratepayer group of community people that have a deep interest in this, and they need to be considered every step of the way, be it the water rates or anything else. They sometimes feel they're used for a purpose and then pushed aside, but they got to be brought into the process on that.
Yes, sir. I think they have screamed their way into the process.
Yeah.
And we will love them, whether they scream or whether they talk softly, and we will involve them. But there is in this city now a tiny screaming minority, and we need to also keep our ear to the ground and listen to the silent majority that just pay their bills and love the DWP.
Yeah, and you know, the last point is, you saw in the news this morning where pipes are bursting again, and water in my Venice is all over the streets, and the puddles are getting beyond belief and all that. Obviously, the infrastructure, whoever we bring in has got to understand how to repair the infrastructure and move in the right direction.
We will be doubling the pace of replacement over the next year as we speak. We already have a major expansion of that in the works. We've got to replace the old pipe faster than we have and try to find the money to do it without burdening the ratepayer too much. It's a challenge.
The last thing about the water is, without water coming in, we couldn't survive here. The Delta issues up north have to be focused on, the Colorado River and the farmers and their use of water, so that we in Southern California can be appreciated with our needs.
It's an important issue. As a matter of fact, we need to be much stronger in saying to the farmers, if we're going to be rationing water in Los Angeles, they need to at least meter the damn water that comes onto the farms, because that's where 70% of the water is. And the mayor was speaking out on that the other day, and I hope the members of the council join him. We need to speak up for the urban user of water, who is really not getting a fair shake out of the water deal that's being put together in Sacramento, in my opinion. The water is going for crops that are very much subsidized at rates that are very low. We are rationing water in Los Angeles. They ought to be at least metering the water going on the farms.
Yeah, and stuff like rice, which needs a lot of water. They shouldn't be growing rice in a semi-desert Central Valley.
Well, they grow Sudan grass in the Imperial Irrigation District, 7 feet of water, and ship it to Japan for cattle feed. We are exporting water to Japan. And I think that the urban voice needs to be louder and stronger in Sacramento.
Yeah, and even
the mayor's speaking up, and I hope you join him.
I'm really glad he is, but you know, a lot of the farmers waste the water. They don't have the tiling, they don't have the infrastructure, and it just goes to waste, and they get it for almost nothing, the water, compared to what we pay for. Well, in conclusion, as you go forward in dealing with water and water rates, let's make sure whoever comes in as general manager knows how to deal with these bigger issues statewide, as well as somebody with a sharp pencil.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
It's good advice.
Mr. LaBonge, followed by Ms. Perry.
Uh-oh, I'm in real trouble now.
No, you're not, Mr. Freeman. Tell the story of water and power. Tell it right. Tell the workers that it's important, and constantly give them encouragement, even though we have this odd situation of these unusual breaks that are there. But as we go forward, I just wanted to give you encouragement to look at it. The one big issue, members, I've talked about it, but we have people who are standing down because of the traffic restriction on work in peak hours, and I want to review that formally because I know you want to get the work done, but there's some restrictions to that situation. I know some of your staff says they could do a lot more if we could work around that. The question there would be on big streets where there would be congestion, maybe we could have a little teamwork with our traffic officers from DOT and whether you have to pick up the cost because you're doing the work, whatever it is.
Mr. LeBon, is this in the context of the water rates that you're asking this
Yeah, it
question?
is, because if you can't fix the pipes, you can't adjust the rates. But you understand what I'm saying.
Yes, sir. It has an impact on rates. The man is in order.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. But I wanted to tell you that, David, just loudly and clearly on that issue. And on the rates, look at it. And also something that I wanted to have, and I know others have shared it too, a different color rate, different color on our bill. Right now it's all green. One should be blue for the city or blue for water and power, and the other should be green. You pick the colors so people understand the municipal charge and the water and power charge, because there's a lot of confusion on that.
We don't have to use red, do we?
Don't use red.
Okay.
Don't use red. You don't use red. But I think that would be helpful. And on the rates, review the rates to the satisfaction of the city attorney. Make sure that the city attorney is clearly understanding of what the rates should be, and make sure that we're doing it right. With the restriction, can I ask this question, Mr. City Attorney? With the reduction of water use due to the conservation effort, what's our revenue loss?
Well, it has a negative impact, but we need to have rates so that we are encouraging conservation and not losing money on it. And that's one thing I want to look at. I don't like the idea that we're successful in conserving water and then turn around and say we don't have enough money. We've got to have a rate structure that encourages conservation, but not necessarily causing us to lose money. So that's one of the things that we need to look at.
Good. Thank you very much. And then also on these various issues that we have here, look for ways to the water side and the power side to continue the great job that the people of Los Angeles want and always believed in DWP. Thank you.
Ms. Perry to close.
Thank you very much, Mr. Freeman, for coming up here today and speaking with us. And with all of the proposals that we have on the table, I know you have a full plate, but ultimately I think that you share the same goal that we do, which is to protect the interests of the ratepayer as much as possible. So we'll see you back in 30 days.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. Mr. Freeman, thank you for your appearance. I understand the direction is to send us back to the department for more review.
And along with Mr. Reyes's amendment.
Very well. That'll be the directive. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Next item, please.
Next item, Mr. President, items 16, 17, and 18 were called special by Mr. Reyes, and I believe he wishes to take the three of them together.
16, 17, and 18. Seeing if we have any cards. We have no cards. 16, 17, 18, Mr. Reyes. 16, 17, and 18?
Yes.
You're up.
Thank you, Council President. Colleagues, I just called this special because I thought it was important that the viewing public, yourselves who are right now working with your community plans, are able to take advantage of these new tools. We have essentially a community plan implementation overlay district that is going to be made available. That's item 18. I'll work backwards here. Item 17, we're going to have essentially another tool called the ground floor commercial zoning, as well as 16, which essentially stimulates a pedestrian-oriented area with the development of a pedestrian emphasis design. These are tools that will hopefully create the kind of environments that you see happening in other cities where, as one of my colleagues spoke to on another committee, the walkability, getting folks out of their cars, getting to enjoy the sidewalks, the streets, the commercial life, as well as stimulating these kinds of environments that brings more commerce to our local neighborhoods. These tools will be made available to them so we can accelerate the process of how we change and redefine the urban design and essentially the urbanscape of our local neighborhoods. So this is really about articulation of the hard work that our planning department has been going through. I think this is a big step towards amplifying that which is very important to us, which is creating jobs, stimulating business, improving the environment, and taking advantage of this trend of people now on bicycles, people wanting safer pathways, safer sidewalks, getting out of their cars, walking in their own neighborhoods. With these tools, we can achieve those goals. So I wanted to just thank the planning department for the hard work and express this to you. Hopefully those who are part of the neighborhood councils, those who are involved with the different community plan areas, take advantage of these new tools. And the staff is here should you have any questions. But this is really about trying to take advantage of this opportunity and essentially thank the staff. They are going through a lot of pressure right now given the cutbacks that are being spoken to in the horizon, and their role in our city is invaluable. We talk about the planning police powers of the city and how we can create opportunities. So thank you very much, staff, and I ask for an aye vote on 16, 17, and 18.
There you go.
Thank you,
there are
Council Member.
no one in the queue. Those three matters before us. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Congratulations. Thank you. Mr. Reyes, congratulations. Next item, please.
Next item is item 26, and that was called special by Councilmember Hahn.
Councilmember Hahn, 26.
Thank you, colleagues. I called this special because we have before us the environmental impact report for the Bradley West project at LA International Airport. And this is actually such a great moment for us and for the city of Los Angeles. It's the first time we've really taken a good hard look at the Bradley International Terminal since it was built in 1984. And what's exciting about this is, we're not just renovating this terminal, we're not just adding new carpet and paint. What we're doing with this project is constructing on the west side of the Bradley Terminal contact gates. We will actually have 9 new contact gates, and those will be able to handle the next generation of aircraft, like the A380, like the Boeing 787, the Dreamliner. We will be enlarging and renovating the customs area, which I know is a big issue to Tom Lavange, who always feels like when these visitors come to LA International Airport after a long flight, what they want is a well-designed, efficient facility that can process them as quickly and as effectively as possible, as friendly as possible, so that their experience the moment they hit the ground in Los Angeles is one that will keep them coming back again and again. We will have 2 new gates will be ready by January of 2012, and the entire project is the end of 2012. That project will be completed. And this just isn't just an international terminal with new gates. I mean, we need to know what this means. Modernizing LAX is key to our economy. Los Angeles International Airport, as well as the Port of Los Angeles, those are our economic stimulus packages. When we invest in projects at those entities, we are creating jobs and we're infusing money into our economy. For instance, this terminal will create approximately 1,425 construction-related jobs over the 5-year construction period, as well as many additional long-term jobs associated with that terminal. And this is a fact that I like to talk about all the time. One daily round-trip overseas flight at LAX generates $623 million annually and provides 3,000 local jobs. And why I say that, and you'd think, well, aren't they there anyway? But part of what we heard from the airline industry was that many of them were looking to not stop at LAX. They can fly over us now with this next generation of aircraft. And what they were telling us was the passenger experience was not going to be one that they were going to try to promote and sell because we had remote gates. So after a 15-hour flight, they had to pull into a remote gate, get on a bus, and be shuttled to our terminal. And it was not the kind of experience they wanted to sell. Those were not the kind of customers they really felt like they wanted to do that to. So us renovating the Bradley terminal, putting on these new contact gates as a part of this project will ensure that we can capture our fair share of the airline industry in terms of their future routes that they will choose. So I'm very pleased with this. I asked a lot of questions in our Commerce, Trade, and Tourism Committee, but I think what we have before us is important. And again, I really am glad we decided to change the makeup of this. I remember standing there at the groundbreaking of the Bradley Terminal renovation and saying, why don't we put gates on the backside while we're doing this project? It doesn't make sense to just renovate the terminal without adding new gates. It was a green-lighted project in the master plan. It was something that the communities agreed on, the council agreed on. There was no reason why we could not green-light a green-light project and put the gates as a part of this project. That's what makes this a very special day, a very special project. So if you have any questions, you can ask the representatives from the airport, but I urge and I vote on approving this EIR. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Mr. Lamonge, followed by Mr. Rosendahl.
Can I have Mr. Rosendahl speak first?
Yes, you can. Mr. Rosendahl, followed by Mr. Lamonge.
I like the way you say Le Bon.
It is Lamonge.
Yes, indeed.
It's that French pronunciation, Mr.
Thank you,
Lamonge.
Mr. President. This is a major day again in our great city. We are spending literally billions of dollars modernizing LAX. There are two reasons we're doing it. One, it hasn't been done since 1984 in the Olympics, and so it's kind of an embarrassment to come to the United States of America to the Total Destination Airport, which is the largest destination airport in the world in terms of coming to one place, and to find it difficult to get around. So the Bradley Terminal, Tom Bradley's terminal, under his name, is getting $1 billion worth of modernization. We kicked it off, Ms. Hahn and Mr. Labange, myself, the mayor, cut a ribbon about 6 or 8 months ago. But now we're in the real day, in the real process. Will this be done by the end of 2012?
Mike, for the record, Mike Feldman with the LA World Airports. The answer to that is yes, Councilman. We are looking at how we can package things to get it done as efficiently and as economically as possible.
When I first came on board this council, I held you all up, and I held you up because there was no element of greening and making it modern in a green sense. Have we arrived at that point now?
Yes, we have. The facility is being designed to meet the silver level of the LEED standard, which is the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. That will make it a energy efficient and resource efficient facility.
And as Ms. Hahn said at a press conference, we need to put these contact gates at the back of the terminal. Are we doing all of that?
Yes, the benefit of this project will allow us to what we would call double load the concourses, so you'd be able to park aircraft on either side, providing contact gates for the largest aircraft that we know will be operating during the life of this facility, the A380.
Can you hold my time, please, so I can finish my questions? Thank you.
The largest 747, as well as the Dreamliner, which was mentioned.
And how much is it going to cost?
The estimate that I've seen so far, in that we've got two packages. We have the core of the building that would be added on to the back of the current Tom Bradley International Terminal building, and then the separate concourses. So there are two packages. As far as I know today, the budget for both of those packages is $1.4 billion.
And now, here's the last question. Okay? I'm big on regionalism. We're a megalopolis of 25 million people. Everybody's stuffed into LAX, which is insane. The airlines don't want to do Ontario because LAX is cheaper. It's the cheapest takeoff and landing airport in America. So how do we make it the less cheap and make it incentive for Ontario?
Wow, that's a good one. Well, first of all, one of the reasons why LAX's landing fees or passenger cost per enplanement is so low is we haven't spent money on the airport for a very long time. And as we add capital debt to our rate structure, we will see our cost per enplanement increase, and the airlines are fully aware of that. How much of the market should be at LAX versus at Ontario is really something that the airlines and their business models are going to determine. We know that there is demand in the Inland Empire for air service, and we expect that as the recovery occurs in our area, that there will be commensurate recovery in the Inland Empire. But they're really not that...
Well, let me show you how they're tied together, colleagues. This is the real story here. Regionalism happens when the cost to land in LAX is a little more expensive than Ontario. Then we will have nonstop, direct, frequent, and discounted flights out of Ontario.
That's right.
United, American, and Delta will do that. Right now, you can't fly out of Ontario to anywhere. There's no nonstop direct. The airlines do it on purpose because it's about $1. They don't care how long it takes you to get to the gate as long as you get to the gate. We on the ground do care.
Yeah.
Modernize LAX, the costs get passed on to the airlines. They will then wake up and realize that from Anaheim to Ontario is closer than to LAX, Inland Empire and everything else, and we will therefore see nonstop, direct, frequent, and discounted flights out of Ontario because we modernized LAX. That's how we get regionalism going. And my folks in Westchester are tired of hearing the word expansion. Modernization, yes. Expansion, no.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Mr. LeBonge?
Hey, thank you very much, Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you.
Just want to proceed. Safety is number one for any type of facility. Just want to cut a long-range study. If you look out to 2030, if that's the projection, when high-speed rail comes to California, what does that say to airports? Does that make San Diego less inclined to build an airport and rely on Los Angeles? Does that, or would you know? And I know I may be giving you a question that you haven't done deep study.
I would be hesitant to give you a really detailed answer on that, other than to say that population centers the size of San Diego, certainly the size of Los Angeles, can support both high-speed rail and air service.
Would you think that would change? Let's just say, in Terminal 1 now is Southwest, right? And that's basically old PSA type formula.
Right.
Would you say that that would decrease a little bit?
I haven't seen the demand projections for how much passenger demand would be diverted to high-speed rail. In other places where I've seen studies like this, the amount of demand that's pulled away from an airport to those sort of short-haul markets, it does have it will have an impact. But in terms of the overall demand for air service at a place like LAX, I would say it would be relatively small. A few percent.
Right. And I think you should look at that as you study other things. I mean, as you look at things, because even in Europe, which is high-speed rail, they have recently had a revolution of short airline flights, which has been amazing, where people fly from London to Paris for $25 or something because they're trying to grow that business after they did all that infrastructure that is there. On the issues in neighborhoods, you know, throughout the corridor, last week I did drive through the corridor looking at things that I hadn't seen in a while there, and the noise impact does affect us. What do they look to the future as far as noise on these aircraft? Is it going to get less, or is it about, is a revolution to make it quieter been complete?
Engine technology continues to advance, both in terms of noise pollution as well as air emission reductions. So there's, but I think I wouldn't look for any major innovations within the next few years. I think we're at a technological point where it will take some fairly major development to really move us much further in terms of less noise or more fuel efficient.
Safety number one, as always, there. And as Mr. Rosendahl mentioned, neighborhood, very important to deal with the issues there. And I do want to thank Ms. Hahn for her leadership of coming about in this area from her committee. Tom Bradley will be very happy to know that what he dreamed about is a Los Angeles was welcome to people from around the world, that the international terminal that bears his name will be modernized, will include gates that will meet the modern aircraft and be at ease. Safety number one, but people want to get through with ease as they move along their way. I thank Ms. Hahn for that and for all you do for California. Thank you, Mr. Zine.
Thank you, Mr. LaBonge. And our final speaker, Councilmember Hahn. Councilmember Hahn, our final speaker.
Thank you. I appreciate all this discussion. It's just, again, a great day to highlight what we're doing out there. I just wanted to add that in this $1.4 billion project, it will be built with a project labor agreement. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I think that's always important. We're modernizing the airport, but we're allowing for good-paying jobs that we know will get this project built on time, on budget. It's a good thing for Los Angeles, and it's really a good thing for the entire region. So thanks for all your hard work. We know you're moving forward. We want to be there to support what you're doing.
Thank you.
Very well. Thank you. That matter is now before us. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
There was already public hearing on that for the folks inquiring. Public hearing was already held on that matter.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Next item, Mr. President, is item 27. That was called special by Councilmember Hahn, and there are cards on this as well.
Number 27, Councilmember Hahn, we have 2 cards. Would you like to hear from the speakers first?
Certainly.
All right. We have Arnold Sachs and Dr. Williams on number 27.
Good morning. Thank you. Arnold Sachs. Infrastructure cargo fee. From the compassionate people at our city council, why not add a fee for medical benefits for the subcontract drivers who have no medical coverage? We know that you're looking to get the airlines to add a 25-cent fee, and we just heard about fees to cover the cost of the Tom Bradley, not the renovation for the Tom Bradley, but the new building, the Tom Bradley West Terminal, which is entirely different from the Tom Bradley Terminal. But we heard a report about fees for the high-speed rail to cover the costs. What that had to do with the EIR, still don't know. But cargo fees. Why not a fee of 2 cents a ton for health benefits? Again, our compassionate city council with your living wage ordinance that allows companies, employers, to eliminate health care coverage for their employees for, as somebody mentioned, but $4.50 an hour, $4.25 an hour. But that only affects people at the airport. What about other workers in the city? What about the subcontract truckers who you read about have no health insurance, no benefits? When do they get covered? By our compassionate city council members. What a crock.
Dr. Williams.
Dr. Clyde Williams, El Sereno. Okay, what does El Sereno have to do with the port? Well, I used to do ports also. The ports of Long Beach and LA are the source of many, many, many trucks. And Caltrans says anything that goes less than 400 miles goes by truck. What do they need? You're going to dump a lot of new vehicles, increased rates of vehicles coming from the ports with these projects. That puts pressure on the south side of 710. So, in point of fact, they want to increase the capacity at the bottlenecks right now so that it will go on to the South 710, which will put more pressure on the North 710 extension through El Sereno. So piecemealing these projects like this, rather than putting them all as to how to get the trucks out of the ports and where do they go. I would highly recommend reconsideration of the environmental documents for the lack of addressing of the piecemealing through El Sereno or the North 710 extension, which is now scheduled to go to construction maybe 2015. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Councilmember Hahn.
Thank you. And Mike, I didn't know if you wanted to come up here just to just maybe talk about a couple of questions that I might ask. But colleagues, what we're doing today is we're amending a tariff that was put in place in June of 2008. And this was an attempt by the Board of Harbor Commissioners to propose a new fee, an infrastructure cargo fee that would be anywhere from $6 to $15 per TEU. And they were going to collect this fee in response to financing some badly needed infrastructure projects around the Port of Los Angeles, like the Gerald Desmond Bridge replacement, the SR-47 Expressway, the Navy Way Seaside Avenue interchange, the 110 connector program, the South Wilmington grade separation, and the port's rail system. And part of this is because, as you know, we always talk about how much cargo we move in the country. Like 43% of all this country's goods come through the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles. But we move 85% of all the goods in the state of California. And yet when it comes down to funding and getting our fair share of the Proposition 1B money, we don't get 85%. And so we have a lot of infrastructure projects around the ports that really are badly in need of repair. So this was the Harbor Commission's idea, which I fully supported at the time, to let's collect a small amount on each cargo, on each container that comes in there, and use that specifically to work on some of these projects. And by the way, that small amount of money probably at the end of the day would have been pennies per item in each of those containers. But I will tell you, one of the number one reasons cargo is diverted is not necessarily all the fees we put on, all the environmental regulations we put on ships and trucks coming in and out of our ports. It's landside congestion. What most of the time these shipping companies want is that cargo to come into our port, get unloaded, and get out in a timely manner. But because of our infrastructure surrounding the ports, sometimes that doesn't already happen. Anyway, I said all that to say what we're doing today is suspending collecting this fee. We realize, the Harbor Commission realized that with the cargo slowdown, we've seen a huge hit on the number of containers that come through our ports as a result of the economy. And they just felt like at this time it wasn't the right time to put on another fee. We actually have the clean truck fee that we're collecting at this time. So what we're doing today is just sort of agreeing to postpone the collection of this fee to a future date. And we have to do that through the tariff procedure. But what I thought, Mike, you know, if people were watching this and listening to this, especially when I said it's our infrastructure that could be hampering the future of goods movement, tell me what you think. What's the status of some of these projects that I talked about, and is there another source of funding out there? What are we doing with some of those projects moving forward to kind of address that need?
Okay.
I would say hold my time, but I'm already over.
Well, you're overtime already.
Hold my overtime.
Overtime being held.
Mike Christensen, Deputy Executive Director with the Harbor Department. Councilmember Hahn, to answer your question, we are not holding back on any of those critical infrastructure projects. one of the reasons that we requested a postponement on this fee is that some of those projects are not quite ready yet. They're either working through the entitlement process or they're in the engineering design phase. So it is not our intent to hold any of those up. Projects like the South Wilmington Grade Separation, the Rearburst 200 Rail Yard are moving forward through design, and we are also protecting the TCIF, or the state Prop 1B bond funding that is intended to assist in the funding on those as well. So we will be, and one of the things that happens with the measure before you is we will come back to our Board of Harbor Commissioners no later than March to look at those projects, look at the funding, and make a recommendation as to how to go forward with this infrastructure cargo fee after July of 2010.
Right, and you'll look at certain things like how the economy is, how our cargo has picked up at the port, and whether or not think it's the right time to begin collecting it. And let me ask, if we are putting upfront money on some of these projects and then we do begin collecting this fee, will that be used to reimburse the port for any money that they've invested in these projects?
Yes, Council Member, that this fee can reimburse us for projects costs once the entitlement is received, the EIR is certified, at any point that we start collecting that fee.
Okay, thank you for that. So colleagues, I urge that we support this idea of postponing collecting this fee, and let's just pay attention to this again. I feel like the landside infrastructure is so important to the future of keeping cargo coming through our ports and not having it diverted elsewhere. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Hahn, thank you. That matter is before us. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Very well. Next item, please.
Next item is item 29, and that was called special for cards.
Number 29, Arnold Sachs. On number 29, sir.
Thank you. Arnold Sachs. It's a good thing you have this foreign trade zone. Economic benefits that are being awarded for $30,000. Luckily, you're delaying the infrastructure cargo fee for the not shovel-ready projects because you have a foreign trade zone that's going to generate $30,000. And how much is it going to cost the taxpayers? How much is it going to cost the city? I know. It's going to generate jobs, jobs, jobs. But in the future, jobs, jobs, jobs. Not shovel-ready jobs, job, job. And we'll come back and discuss what the cost will be on the containers that'll travel from Torrance through the Harbor Gateway area to the pier, because that infrastructure is protected. Thank you.
Thank you. Matters before us. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Next item, please.
Next item is item 40, and that was called special for cards.
Number 40, Dr. Williams, Arnold Sachs. Number 40.
Dr. Clyde Williams, El Sereno. Today, you're getting back to the normal rates, around $43,000 of, I say, unaudited funds. How do we get here? If you take 43,000 times 3 times 50, that's an annualized of $6 million. Just today, the total budget that you will be approving shortly, which I oppose, is equivalent to 1/2 of one entire neighborhood council, which represents 40,000 people, roughly, where you get 360 free person hours every year. Can't you get these things back to the neighborhood councils? Or give them to CRA, which has a lot more money. Thank you.
Arnold Sachs.
Thank you again, Arnold Sachs. Again, I'd like to thank Councilman Garcetti for correcting my remarks regarding fee waivers. But there's none listed here for Staples Center. There's none listed for LA Live. And again, when were they discussed? In what committee? When was this voted on by the city council? When did you change the city charter like you changed it, or the city council changed it in 1995 to include the venues, the Hollywood Bowl, the Greek Theater, LA Dodgers, the Staples Center before it was even built, LA Live before it was even built, the Coliseum? You changed the charter. But you haven't voted to change the charter for the Dodger Stadium and the Coliseum and LA Live and the Hollywood Bowl and the Greek Theater. So when does that vote take place? I know. It's a furlough day. Can't vote on a furlough day. But if you have a furlough day, you can go down to Staples Center, count the number of police and traffic enforcement officers who are getting paid overtime, and we're not getting reimbursed. So, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chief of Police, while you're still here, Mr. Bratton, how do you figure to keep the police the numbers that you want when you don't get reimbursed for it? I know. If you had deep pockets, then you get a free ride. You got a farmer's market, you got to pay. You got a street festival, you got to pay. You got a concert at Staples Center, you don't have to pay. You got the Michael Jackson Memorial, you don't have to pay. You got a concert at AEG, at LA Live, you don't have to pay. But street festivals cost money.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sachs. And that'll close our public comment on this item. If we can please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Next item is item 42, and the amending motion has been distributed on that item.
Okay, let's go ahead and then accept that as friendly amendment, prepare the roll on 42 as amended, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That is approved as well. Next order of business.
Council has motions for posting and referral,
Those are posted and referred.
and that clears the desk.
Okay. I want to wish a very special happy birthday to Mr. John Wooden, who is celebrating his 99th birthday today. 99 incredible years, and he still is there at those great UCLA games and inspiring generation after generation of great coaches. So a very happy birthday, Coach Wooden, from all of us. You have an announcement or a journey? Okay. Mr. Rosendahl. And then
Yes,
we'll
colleagues,
come around.
this announcement,
Here, and forgive me, I had a chance to bump into him in the garage, which is so special. And later on, with Bernard at the Coliseum, when he got his plaque, Vince Scully spoke. And Vince Scully spoke about how when he first came out here with the Dodgers, and how when he brought his groceries home to his apartment in Brentwood, this young guy from Indiana opened the gate to help him into his apartment. How small a world is. Back in the 50s, these two superstars in life, Coach Wooden and Vince Scully, crossed in the same apartment building. God bless John Wooden for being such a great coach, as well as Vince Scully for a great voice.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl.
yes, this is an announcement for all of us colleagues here, and I'm giving it to you today because it will be an item on the calendar for Friday. On October 10th, just now, the LADOT exhausted their special events overtime account. Therefore, the department is unable to send traffic officers to cover special events unless the city is reimbursed ahead of time. Today, we introduced a motion relative to how we provide notification to event sponsors in this transition period. The Brown Act prohibits us from discussing this further at this time, but I wanted to give you a heads up that we will be taking up this matter for discussion this Friday in Council.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that bit of housekeeping, Mr.
There's going to be an audit of the use. You said that? Is there going to be an audit?
I think the point is we can't discuss this any further.
It will be on Friday's
We can have
agenda.
private communications with Mr. Rosendahl on that. Ms. Hahn?
Thank you. I just wanted to make an announcement and kind of give a shout out. I was down on the docks this morning at 8 a.m. It was actually over on the Port of Long Beach ITS terminal, where hundreds of longshoremen and longshore women were donating their entire day to loading containers on a ship that is bound for Western Samoa. The Samoan churches, many of them in Carson and I think in Wilmington, helped to bring the food, the water, the clothes, and load these containers. They got some independent truck drivers that drove those containers to the docks, and then they had the crane drivers, the UTR drivers, everyone working together to load these goods. It was a great show of humanitarian spirit among men and women who spend their life moving goods for this country, and for them to take their day to day and completely volunteer their time. I just wanted to thank them. I went down there personally to just thank them for this great show of humanitarianism. And I appreciate ITS, which was the terminal where the ship was leaving from, for their cooperation. And it was a great moment today to be with them while they were doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Other announcements? Yes, Mr. Smith and then Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tomorrow is the second anniversary of the Great Shakeout project in the state of California. Last year, the city of LA participated in the Great Shakeout. We had 5.5 million people participate last year in the Southern California region. This year, it's already over 7 million people have signed up. A phenomenal effort on the part of the USGS, the city of LA, and the State Seismic Commission to inform people how to be prepared for earthquakes. It's free of charge. Just go to www.shakeout.org for information and participate tomorrow in getting ready for the next earthquake, which everyone here knows is coming. Thank you very much.
Mr. Rosenthal.
Yes, colleagues, you remember that I did an adjourning motion for Nancy Daly. It's been announced that the event honoring her, a memorial, will be on Wednesday, October 21st at 6:30 in the evening at Royce Hall, and all of you are welcome to attend that memorial service for one of our great angels of this great city of angels, Nancy Daly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Other announcements, colleagues? Do we have any adjourning motions? Yep. If I can ask everybody to please rise in our city council chambers for our adjourning motions. Thank you, Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you, Council President. So with great sadness, we announce the loss of Sandra de Dios. She passed away Sunday, October 11th. She passed away in her sleep, and she was only 29 years old. We knew Sandra through her work through the Deaf Festival. Sandra was involved with the Deaf Festival last month as the planning committee member and registrar in charge during Deaf Festival 2009 on Saturday, September 26th. Sandra graduated from California School for the Deaf in Riverside in 1999. She graduated and received her BA in Physical Education and Leisure Studies from California State University Northridge in June of 2009. She was the IM director for Deaf CSUN IANS and was very active with Dynamingo Inc. for all women's sports. Sandra participated in many athletic sports such as basketball, softball, volleyball, as well as playing as a point guard for CSDR girls basketball team for CSDR and CSUN. Sandra de Dios was very active in her leadership in promoting basketball, flag football, and softball for the Far West Athletic Association of the Deaf, as well as playing in many sports that were women's sports and she was a great athlete. She had played in all national tournaments and representing different local sport organizations. She survived by her father, Francisco de Dios, and her 3 siblings. Sandra was the only deaf member of her family, and she was the eldest of her 4 siblings.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. Mr. Labanci.
Thank you very much, members. I ask for your adjourned in memory of Irving Karp, who was one of the founding members of the Quanjo Sister City. He lived to be 93 years old, a beautiful man. In 1981, he went with Tom Bradley and Kenneth Hahn to Guangzhou, China, on a visit, one of the first visits that opened up this sister city relationship. He was very involved with Chinese-American affairs, and he truly was a wonderful man. On our banquet just recently held, when the mayor of Guangzhou was there, Irving was there, and this is what is the fortunate thing. I just say this because every day is a blessing. As we left the banquet hall in Chinatown, he was on the other side of the parking lot, and I was walking the other way, and I absolutely went back to give him a hug and a hey to thank him for all that he did, because he was very special contributor for this committee and for those relations. Irving Karp lived to be 93, as I mentioned. He survived by his wife, a very special wife, as well as 3 children. I thank you and ask we adjourn in memory of a great Angelino Irving Karp.
Thank you. Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask that we adjourn in memory of Mary Bell Bakewell, the mother of Danny and Pam Bakewell. She was born... we did that already? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we did all members, but there were 3 primary folks. It was you and Mr. Wesson and Ms. Perry, and then all members were attached as seconders. Any other adjourning motions today, colleagues? If not, thank you to everybody who took time out of their day to be here today. We'll next be in session.